Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. My apologies, we are 1 minute late. It's Kevin Graham's fault. My name's Paul John Dykes, and I'm joined by Kevin and Jerry and a new face in James French. How are you doing, James? Welcome to the show.
Good, yeah, delighted to be on now. I've been listening to the podcast for a year or so now, so delighted to be able to come on and contribute.
You know the amount of people that contact us, James, and say, it's about time you got an Irish voice on this, right? So you're very welcome to be here on a Monday, and also on this Monday of all Mondays after Liam Scales. Kevin Graham, let's start off with Scalesy. Liam Scales, he was called a warrior by Brendan Rodgers yesterday. Talk me through the kind of evolution of Liam Scales. He comes in from the Irish League, and there were some concerns about the step up, we said, to Scottish football. I think his first season under Ange, there were some good points. And then last season, obviously, spent at Aberdeen. There was certainly one good point I can remember. It comes back into the side as a fifth or sixth choice centre-half. Man of the match performance against Rangers at Ibrox yesterday. Talk me through it, Kev.
I'm not going to say I predicted it last Tuesday when I was on, but I'm going to say I predicted it last Tuesday when I was on.
Hey, you've got to take the small victories when they present themselves, Kev. You really do.
Did you not predict there was Hee-Haw coming in as well, though, Kev?
Hee-Haw, yeah. Hee-Haw, right. We'll come back to that.
I can't get two right in a week. That's my. Even a stop clock tells the right time twice a day. But that's the. I said last week, and my thinking was that it would maybe be easier for him going to Ibrox because all he would have to do was defend.
You did say that. Yep.
That was my whole reasoning for it. He didn't need to break forward. He wasn't getting asked to be a centre midfielder. He wasn't being asked to go up the wing. He wasn't being asked to create anything. He was just there to stop the ugly so-and-so's scoring. That's all he was there to do. And he's been doing that. He's 25 now. He's been doing that since he's been a professional player and well before that as well. And that's what I meant. That says it might suit him better because he goes, there's no pressure on me. I'm sixth choice centre-half. It doesn't matter if I go out and be Baresi today. I'm still going to be sixth choice centre-half after the international break and when other guys come back in. Now, he's maybe got to sell maybe a game until Nat Phillips gets up to speed or one of the hang may come back. But he's went out and he's had what will be his highlight of his Celtic career. It will be his highlight. He got man of the match at Ibrox. Now, he'll maybe still get that move in January. He'll maybe still end up going to Aberdeen, or that yesterday might have pricked up a couple of other clubs' ears. I went, there's a decent guy there, eh? And that's what I meant, that the pressure might have been off him a bit. Because he knew his job when he was gone there. He was gone there today. Same way Lager Bielka as well. I thought you were a bit harsh on him with the mistakes. I mean, one of them was a clear foul. I didn't know anybody can argue that wasn't a foul. And look, two young laddies are going to make mistakes at the back. Especially that guy's his third game in. He's never been in an absolutely hate fest cauldron like that. So of course he's going to. But the older guys stood up. Joe Hart stood up. Callum McGregor stood up, helped him through the actual game. Both guys were absolutely phenomenal. And I loved at the final whistle, Tony Ralston with the two of them. Ralston knew.
100%. Now, last week, Kev, if you're going to take your credit, I'm going to take mine, right? I said, Jerry's laughing because this doesn't often happen. We didn't often get it right. I said that there's certain people needs to step up here because it's proper backs to the wall performance. We've been written off. And I mentioned the likes of Joe Hart and Callum McGregor, Jamesy Forrest, more behind the scenes, Tony Ralston. And people say, I can't believe you mentioned Tony Ralston. Ralston's at that stage of his career now, Kev. He is a senior pro. And when you bring in 9, 10 new faces in a window, you really need to look to that group of senior pros to step up. And I think a few of the points you've made there in relation to Nat Phillips, we'll come back to him because you organised to get your big pal John Gibbons on last week. He was brilliant telling us all about Nat Phillips on Friday. The clear foul, totally agree with that. On that one, Kev. Millions won't if you look at the fallout from that foul. Unbelievable. It takes Bobby Madden to come in and tell us all that it was a foul. Whoever thought that'd happen? And then the hate fest. Celtic fans weren't there. I think that proves a lot. Fighting in amongst themselves on the faded blue seats at the end of the game.
Another missile thrown on the pitch as well, which nothing's been said about as far as I'm aware.
That was swept under the rug. Now, I'm going to... It looked like a vape. It looked like a vape, yeah. Aye. I'm going to ask yourself, James, because listen, it's about time Scales got a bit, for me, a bit of positive kind of chat on Acsom, because at the beginning of the season, James, I wrote a blog about 10 guys that I felt couldn't leave this summer. He was on the list. Now, it's not that I don't rate him as such. And I think when he came in, a lot of our Irish viewers were like, Paul, you're underestimating the Irish game here in terms of the step up to the Scottish game. It's not as vast as you think it is. And then he came in, and you remember some of the performances, lads. The performance against Ross County, it's remembered for Ralston's 97th minute winner. Scales was brilliant that night, in my view. I think he was brilliant at Tannadice where he scored that belter of a goal. And then you think about the Mould performance away where he wasn't great. He goes out, which I think was the right move, a season-long loan deal, scores against Rangers, an absolute cracker. But I didn't think that he had a future at Celtic, James, despite the fact that he looked very good during the pre-season. What's your take on Scales? Is that something that surprised you yesterday, that he stepped up and he did it with style?
I think Celtic fans took kind of a bit of just a snobby view towards Liam, I'd say, coming over from Ireland. A bit of background on Liam, he came through, so UCD, which would be kind of a feeder club in the League of Ireland, came through their pathway, obviously, signed up for Shamrock Rovers, had a good few years there domestically and in Europe, being pressed in Europe. Rovers kind of went on a bit of a run. Obviously got to move to Celtic, and Irish fans are kind of probably a bit unsure on it, with a lot of Irish players recently have kind of struggled to make the break at Celtic, such as Afalabi, Lee O'Connor, off the top of my head anyway. They're two I can think of. But I think I'm delighted for Liam because, just funny enough, he's only 10 minutes down the road from me in Wicklow, so I'm always going to be a bit biased towards Liam. But I think he's proved a lot of people wrong. I think, funnily enough, at the weekend, Lagerbilk, who we brought in for £3 million or so, I think Scales probably showed him up, which was surprising to me anyway. Consider the money you pay for Lagerbilk, but I am quite impressed with Lagerbilk still. But I think he really stepped up to the play. Rodgers said after the match that he wanted his players to really become men out there, and I really think Scales done that. And especially I think when he came in, obviously, and obviously with the inverted fullbacks, and Liam was kind of playing on that left side of the defence. He was good for the first 6 months, and kind of used them reasonably enough because of the barren squad we kind of had. And then after Christmas, obviously didn't see as much game time. But that, I think, a lot of Celtic fans' opinion on Scales is probably from that Bodo Glimt game, the 2-0 loss. Yeah. Where I think it was probably unfair to judge him on that. He was poor that night, I would admit that, but I think if you look at the side we put out, it was a kind of a second string side, and I just think probably wasn't completely his fault for the performance. And then obviously at his loan at Aberdeen, I thought he was very good. Aberdeen fans were mad to see him go back there. But yeah, I think he really could be an option even at left back for Rodgers this season, especially with Taylor's recent form has been really poor. Even at the weekend, I thought some of his passing, Taylor's normally very very safe on the ball with his passing, and I just thought he was poor, to be honest. I remember when Brendan came the first time, obviously the 4-2-3-1 with Lustig and Tierney as the fullbacks. Lustig kind of tucked into a tree nearly. He's a bit, obviously Lustig was more of 6'1", whatever. He was more of a centre half playing right back, and he kind of tucked in as a tree in Europe, allowed Tierney to kind of gallop down that left side. And I think that could be something maybe Brendan could look at. Scales kind of playing left back, but nearly even tucking into a tree when it comes to playing in Europe.
It's a great shout. I mean, it's interesting how quickly these things can change. Now, by the way, I didn't go in studs up on Scales, but I did think that it kind of run its course. I believe Celtic wanted 800 grand for him. I think that was maybe the stumbling block for Aberdeen, who weren't going to be paying that kind of money for him. But what do you reckon, Jerry, of the idea that we've gone into that transfer window probably hoping to sign a left back? It didn't happen, and then all of a sudden, Liam Scales reminds us that he can do a job. It's one of the ones where he has been asked to step up. He's stepped up, and he's right back into the gaffer's plans. And great bit of man management by Brendan Rodgers, but fair play to Scales as well, Jerry. Stepped up.
He hasn't half. How many's left on your list, by the way?
Well, Mikey Johnson, Stephen Welsh, Liam Scales, and McCarthy's still in the building as well, actually, and Turnbull. Yeah, so only 5. I got 50% of them.
Oh well, better than I would have done. Well, it's so good being back on. By the way, even though I've been away doing all that stuff, I've just been missing it. I've missed all like the important stuff, like the last day of the transfer window, the Champions League draw, all that stuff. But Scales, I'm wearing my special T-shirt today, by the way, lads.
Nice bit of placement there. Yeah,
means a lot to me. Special T-shirt. So, can I quickly give a rundown of everything that I missed last week? I've got
let's do it. Look at this. You're prepared. I like it.
I'll make it really
shame, Jerry.
Right, you won't be impressed when I read it. Right, so I'll just do it quickly because I know we've got what to talk about the game yesterday. So, Phillips, like. Palmer, excited. Bernardo, Jota vibes, like. McCarthy still here, don't like. Ajeti gone, like. Hacks are gone, like a lot. Right, that's me done. Scales is brilliant.
By the way, again, you talk about footballers like they're commodity, right? And I totally get it. So, James McCarthy, what a footballer he's been in his entire career. I remember him at Hamilton. And, he was one of the guys that you kind of thought and hoped that Celtic would sign because he did have that promise. I remember talking about John McGinn when he was at St Mirren, thinking, buy him. It's 300 grand. He's got it. We didn't do it. He's gone away. And then for many years in his career, James McCarthy was too expensive for Celtic. We couldn't buy him. We couldn't pay his wages. And when the times finally came round, it's came round at a time where he's been absolutely hammered by injuries. I think I did the stats on, the minutes that he played, Jerry. And the minutes were the equivalent to something like an average of 9 games for the 5 seasons prior to coming to Celtic. So it shouldn't come as a surprise he's not played many games for us. But over the last 2 seasons, that average has actually dropped down to something like 5 or 6 games, if you're looking at 90-minute equivalents. So, you know what? I feel sorry for any player who gets hit by a run of injuries, particularly somebody like McCarthy, who is absolutely a Celtic fan. This is his dream, playing for Celtic, and it's just no worked out for him. But he's still in the building. I don't expect to see him. But when we're talking about these players, it's really just to free up jerseys, free up wages, bring somebody else who can contribute. But yeah, Liam Scales, and after it as well, Jerry, I just felt when he was getting interviewed, there was a humility about him, because he was talking, he was kind of playing it down. He was saying, it's just 3 points. My phone's gone daft. I'm going to have to check it when we're on the bus. Very, very humble. And it was just, I love to see it. You've mentioned Nat Phillips. Before I go back to Kev, though, tell us a wee bit, because there was something on that sheet that you didn't add in. And that was the fact that you've just done a run of shows at the weekend. How was it? It
was outstanding, mate. It was standing ovations they got every single night. It was brilliant. I mean, it just kind of bypassed me the week. We had 8 days to throw it all together. When I say throw it together, it was a professionally put together show, but 8 days we had. And the amount of people, do you know what? It was so nice. The amount of people in that audience that were Acsom fans. It was brilliant and just shows how far the reach is. So thanks to everyone that shared it. I met a couple right now. Your names escaped me and I'm sorry because I met them outside in between shows and they're huge fans. I said, put a comment in the things about that. We don't do tech, but they wanted to thank everyone because they say that they listen to it. They're a married couple, maybe. I don't want to guess your ages. They were maybe in their 60s, something like that. But they say they always listen to it together. And I said I'd give them a wee shout out today. But the shows went absolutely amazing. That's me done with the Billy and Tim brand now, mate. It's been handed back. I just felt like it was... I'm doing a lot with Celtic now, with likes at Acsom and going to the events and stuff. And I just think it was maybe a conflict of interest because obviously there's involvement with the other team. So I'm kind of handing that back and started writing my new show, which will be coming out next year, which is called Blame It on the Bucky. And it's all set in one living room. And it's the wake of a grandmother and the corpse has gone missing from the coffin and nobody knows where it's gone. So that's the next one.
I like the sound of this, right, Jerry? I'm going to have to go around the room here. Kevin Graham, have you ever blamed anything on the Bucky?
That sheet of paper is endless.
One of the reasons I don't flashback.
I'm not going to ask you, James, because you're a young, aspiring journalist, and there's no way that you would indulge in a dabble of the tonic wine. So I'm not going to lay that one on you, especially not on your debut either. I really am keen to bring in some of the comments. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. I mean, listen, with regards to where we're going with this, I'm going to ask Kevin Graham about, the lead up to this. There was a lot of worried souls out there, Kev. And some people are admitting it on the comment section. Bri Ward, I didn't think we would win, but never happier to be wrong. This is the thing. If I was wrong about Scales, I'm happy to be wrong, because that means that he's playing well. He's a success. So fantastic that he's proven people like me wrong. Jungle Lion, when the team was announced yesterday, everybody was worried. Then ending up with a back four of Ralston, Bernaby, Scales, and the Lager lad. Clean sheet. What do we know? Listen, some people might think I'm giving too much credit to Brendan Rodgers here, but I'm going to say it, Kev, right? This is a coach that first time round we were calling him an elite coach. One and a wee bit bad seasons for Leicester, and all of a sudden his stock drops. He comes back to Celtic. I've put it out there already, and people probably disagreed due to the manner in which we started this season. I think he's a better coach than the one that left Celtic Park. I think he's gone away and got experience and is far more pragmatic. I think it's going to hold us in good stead when we go into the European games as well, Kev. But what was your thoughts going into this? There was loads of negativity flying about, wasn't there?
There was. I've got two things first. The guy that came on with the comment there, I can't actually remember calling Lager Bielka the Lager lad. Some dude out there has to put him on the back of a lager can, like they used to have in the 1980s.
Like a Lager Lovelies, like the tenants Lager Lovelies.
With a swimsuit on.
Oh, maybe not that far, mate. I'm not.
I'm quite liking that idea, Jerry, to be fair.
James is looking at us and going, what the hell is he talking about? Because you're far too young to remember
James,
that.
back in the 80s, right, this actually happened in Scotland, and I'm sure that it was exported elsewhere, but the Tennent's lager cans had pictures of female models on them, and they were called Lager Lovelies. And I don't know if Carol Smiley was one of them. Is that just a myth that she was on it?
She was. And I also remember being impressed that former Rangers goalkeeper Nicky Walker was married to one. I remember being utterly bamboozled by that in 1984.
Other lagers are available.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about how far we've come, though, I mean, you have a bevy and then you can look at a lady on the side of your can. Dear me. I'm glad we've kind of progressed. Yeah, we've progressed since then.
I'd have to ask my Scottish relatives about that now. Definitely.
If any of them have still got the tins, these are very rare, James. I mean, these are museum pieces now. Lager Lovelies, unbelievable. Anybody else got any Lager Lovely memories? Share them, please, in the comment section. And indeed, if you're married to someone who appeared on the side of a Tennent's Lager can, please let us know. Kev, sorry, you're digressing.
And my second point is, nobody's going to mistake James coming for Fife, eh?
No, absolutely.
He's not going to get called a shooter anyway.
James, if you do need anything translated from Kevin Graham, give us a shout, and Jerry and I will try our hardest, all right, to translate it.
I know, I'm used to the accent now, listening to the podcast. I'm fully integrated into the Scottish language now.
Super.
Because I can't understand what Kev says.
That's fine.
The thing that surprised me, the thing that surprised me, right, was we're going into this game. We know what Brendan Rodgers has achieved at Celtic, right? And he's not regressed. He's not regressed as a manager or as a coach. We're going to be talking today about certain things that he was able to pull out of players like Scales. He was talking about Scales being a warrior. He was talking about that speech he gave about he needed his men to stand up today, and they did. We heard previously some of the techniques that he utilised when he was a manager, like putting messages in the lockers, all these wee tiny things that might give you an extra percent, an extra margin, right? And I know that sometimes Rodgers is kind of meme-like, James. People think that, the ego and all this kind of stuff. But he definitely is a great man manager, a motivator of players. And I can see it. I could see it yesterday in Scales. I could see it in Matt O'Reilly. I think he's been sensational under Brendan Rodgers. And that was a reminder yesterday, James, wasn't it, that we do have... I don't know if elite is the right word for it now, but we do have a top quality coach in Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, I think the talk around Brendan Rodgers after the poor start to the season was just really naive, to be honest. Especially coming from Celtic fans, we all know what the like how brilliant Rodgers was in his last stint at the club. Obviously, even went down to England, 2 fifth place finishes with Leicester, an FA Cup victory, like finishing 5th in the Premier League with the Super League that it is now with the money is a significant achievement. Like really, competing against them other top tier English sides. I think just the confidence Rodgers gives the players is just remarkable. Even I seen at Matt O'Reilly's game since he came. I thought Matt O'Reilly really stepped up at the weekend. It felt like a bit of a coming of age game for him. Even just not his passing and his general technical plays. He was intercepting passes and just really just looked more confident in his ability. Even since Rodgers came, he seems more vocal in press conferences. And I think anyone who doubts Brendan Rodgers kind of doubt him at your peril, because I just can't see him not being successful, being honest, with this Celtic team, even if it is early days and we've loads of new signings. You just can't really write him off.
You know, this is the thing as well. Yesterday, that was kind of like set up for peak Brendan Rodgers, Jerry, you know, where he's been written off. Celtic fans, and we know what he's capable of, and he's been written off. And then he's got this injury list that would choke a horse, you know, and it's like, you're right down to the bare bones when it comes particularly to the central defensive area. You're asking a guy in Lagerbielke to step up. And by the way, I think he has. I think he's stepped up over the 3 games. Kind of gone under the radar in the last 2 before the Rangers game. But I'd probably agree with James. I think that Scales stood out even amongst the £3 million new boy. And then, you know, you're looking at Johnson right in to the team last week and obviously just getting his second appearance. Taylor hasn't really been up to the kind of standards that we expect of him. But the other player in that back 5, Jerry, is Joe Hart. And we've been talking about Hart, you know, for weeks on the show. I think during the pre-season, there was a moment, was it against Gambo Osaka, where he sold the jerseys for one of the goals, or was it maybe against Marinos? And I'm thinking to myself, you know, we've seen all this before. Will we never learn? And then against Ross County, I thought it was a wee bit harsh to blame Hart for the moment when Simon Murray thought he should have had a penalty, because I thought Ralston probably played a really difficult ball back to him. But since then, Joe Hart has just concentrated on being a goalkeeper, Jerry. He doesn't have to be the sweeper keeper. And I mean, there was moments yesterday where we would never have seen even the by kick, even something as simple as a goal kick. And Joe Hart is absolutely putting his laces through it. And he's saying to the Celtic players, go and win the ball, rather than, you know, playing it within his own box. How often did we see it last season where he's playing the ball to Carter Vickers in his own box and we're trying to start the attack from there? What actually happened yesterday, I think, is Joe Hart at his absolute best. Be a goalie, save chances, be a leader. None of this tippy-tappy stuff. So I think he's got the best yesterday out of guys like O'Reilly and Scales, but we can't forget Joe Hart either, Jerry.
No, definitely not. And you know what? Everyone knows that I've been pretty vocal about him all pre-season. And it's been a tough one because I'm part of the goalkeeper union. But on the Wonder Round Paradise last week, I said, I mean, it's amazing that I've been talking about him all pre-season and all of a sudden it became the least of our worries. And that was last week. And now I've changed it to, I'm quite happy we've got Joe Hart, because especially when you look at it for the Champions League, where we're going to have to dig in, and he's going to be there just doing what he needs to do, and he looks a lot more comfortable. I think, so sorry, Joe. All right, hands up. I'm sorry with that one. And I'm glad, though, because I did say that I want to be wrong. I would always say that. And I always want to be wrong about these players, especially Scales. And I think the fact that you've mentioned that Celtic were holding out for 800 grand for him, and that would have been as a left back, because I'm sure he was playing most left back with Aberdeen. So they see him as an £800,000 left back. So they obviously see something in him. Brendan sees something in him, and I'm starting to myself now. What Brendan did at the weekend, I think, what was brave, was not to use any of the new signings, because I'm sure he would have been tempted. I mean, there's always that, it's like, do I risk it? Because Beale and Brendan were both the same when it came to the game. Whoever lost it was going to be under some serious pressure. Brendan would have been under pressure because obviously there's some folks still with the knives out waiting to put him under that pressure. So he's going to have less time. So I think that he showed how brave he was to just, because if he picks any of the new boys, that's your chance of disrupting the dressing room yet again. And we know that we've had a bit of a split. So he was really brave to do that, and proved he was right. And I do think we have an elite manager. What we saw from our captain, it just felt like old Celtic again, didn't it? It was so good to watch. I mean, it was a long second half, don't get me wrong. I felt we were playing for about 3 hours there, but didn't feel like we were going to lose it. And who's Brendan going to pick now when he does get Phillips up to scratch? Is it going to be Scales? Is it going to be Lagerbielke? And it's a good headache to have, considering a week ago we were looking at playing Kyogo at centre back at one point.
Listen, it's a great headache. It's a brilliant dilemma. I think the aftermath as well has been very interesting, Kevin, because we spoke about, obviously, some of the negativity circling the game and people writing off Celtic's chances of getting a result at Ibrox. I get that it was all set up for Celtic to fail. We're going in there, there's an injury crisis. We've bought loads of new players, have not really been bedded in. We've got a change in manager. We've lost top players like Jota and Moy and Starfelt. I get it. And added to that, no fans in the ground, right? So you're thinking all those elements, this is a perfect time for Rangers to win the first Glasgow Derby of the season. But I wasn't willing to write off Brendan Rodgers. I really wasn't, all in the week leading up to it. But what I heard after it, and we'll get to the refereeing decisions in a moment, what I heard after it was sensational, because I generally don't listen to any kind of like aftermath on any other platforms, because you just don't have the time, do you? I mean, after the game, you've got other, and then you're jumping in the car to go home. But someone texted me and goes, you should listen to this. And I'm not even going to advertise it, but I listened to it. It wasn't a Celtic podcast, I've got to say. It certainly wasn't a Rangers one either. And it was a mainstream platform. And they were going on about the fact that Brendan Rodgers has bought himself time, Kevin, by winning that game. And you're thinking, and they're saying, if Michael Beale had won the game, he'd have bought himself time. And I'm thinking, these guys are bonkers. They're obviously watching it through a completely different sphere. And they're kept referring to this Celtic side. Rangers couldn't beat this Celtic side. This Celtic side are the treble holders of Scotland. They've won 5 trophies out of 6 in the last 2 seasons. And then they were talking about individual performances. And somebody suggested that O'Reilly had a good game. The response was, in flashes. And then that individual went on to speak about how good Cantwell was. Unbelievable, Kev. Right? When people are watching the game through that kind of, sphere. But by the way, fair play to them. If they want to believe all that, that's fine, because obviously we're a lot stronger than they think we are, and they're a lot weaker than they believe themselves to be as well. What about the aftermath, Kev? What did you make of the aftermath? And not only on, obviously, social media, but also in the mainstream media, on the terraces. What was your thoughts?
The mainstream media are just delusional, is what they usually are. They've got to try and sell clicks and try to sell papers and try to get listeners and try to get viewers. So they know that bumming up absolute no-marks like Barbie and Raskin and Michael Beale is like the only way to keep folk interested. They want Rodgers to fail. They know for a fact that they were over the moon that Ange Postecoglou went to Spurs. Mm-hmm. I watched Spurs on Saturday, man. I still love them. I really do. I still do. The Spurs fans didn't deserve them.
I can feel your pain.
And it was the same yesterday post-game when Rodgers came out and he gave I asked these boys to be men. I said, I'm falling in love with you again, mate. Jesus, didn't do this to me. So I'm back there. But they want us to feel. I mean, when Postecoglou left, they're going to get this guy, that guy, and next thing you can, you get a manager who had Leicester in 2 fifth-place finishes, won an FA Cup. He comes back. He goes, I'll come back, and that was probably no matter your beef with him, you couldn't actually say there was a better candidate there. My beef is it could be a bit of a Dermot Desmond vanity project. It could well be. Who knows? Rodgers himself, I've got a nice house in Glasgow, so I'll come back. There was a couple of things that just gone, and especially at the start that we've had. But I think you've seen at Pittodrie away and there yesterday, what Rodgers has learned in the English Premier League with Leicester. That we'll sit back, we can hit on the break. If you want to if we go 1-0 up and you want to have a go at us, I know how to set up a team now, which will be very, very hard to beat and will trouble you. And yes, I was a bit perplexed when I saw the team yesterday, just because of the performance the week before. And the fact is, Nat Phillips has come in, but he's came in injured seemingly. And Scales is there, and you're going, oh, this could be a bit dodgy. But then as the game started, we had control of the ball, and you could see what we were doing. Rodgers knew that there was space in behind him. Rodgers knew that Abada and Maeda would trouble them. And as soon as we went 1-0 up, it was like, bang, right, you just come at us now, because we're going to hurt you. And if I wanted somebody to have that Johnny Hayes moment right at the end when we broke in the last 10 minutes a couple of times.
I thought it was Maeda, Kev. I thought it was Maeda at the back post.
I wanted it just to actually calm down a bit so I could enjoy the last injury time, but it didn't happen, but it should have happened. It really should have. And that bodes well. I think that's what you've seen, what Brendan Rodgers has actually learned. Because, see, when he came to Celtic in the first place, the teams that he was with always had the ball. Liverpool, Swansea, the way that he had them playing, always had the ball. He went to Leicester for 4 years. They didn't really have the ball. And he created a team and a game plan which got them the 2 5th place finishes in that. And I think I've seen that at Pittodrie and also Ibrox yesterday. I think that's the main difference that I've seen. Against the pack defences, we've struggled, but I think that's more down to the players adapting to how we're going to get in behind these sort of defences. And I think that will change once we get more players back. At the moment, I think there's a couple of square pegs and round holes.
You know what Kev's saying, James, in relation to, a period of adapting to a different style, a different game plan, still quality players obviously in there, and much different from the Ange Postecoglou style, because having gone 1-0 up, I'm pretty sure Ange would have wanted a second and a third and a fourth. That's the way he played. Whereas there's a far more kind of reserved, pragmatic approach from Rodgers. Maeda spoke about, adapting from a very fixed style that he was used to under Postecoglou. McGregor's spoken about, we're going to have to make it work. We're going to have to stick together. And it is really just a matter of time. But how big a result yesterday is that going to be in terms of galvanising this side and so that we can actually then start getting into that rhythm that Rodgers is trying to implement?
Yeah, I think it's a huge result, to be honest. I think Rodgers, I was really looking forward to seeing Rodgers in the Celtic dugout, just because I think Ange was very fixed on one style, especially in Europe. Just he never really strayed, which is obviously, it can be a really good thing sometimes. But I think just having someone that's willing to change tactically game by game is just really, really useful. I think Rodgers definitely went down south and obviously learned great deal managing in the best league in the world, the Premier League. So managing down there, getting 2 5th place finishes, I think he's obviously learned a lot. I think it really feels like it's Rodgers' era started now with that win at the weekend. It was a real kind of Brendan Rodgers style performance. The result itself reminded me a lot of the win at Ibrox under Ange in the first year, the 2-1, where kind of Rangers scored the early goal, albeit it was disallowed. And then we ended up, I think, really digging in near the end and coming under a lot of pressure. But I think in terms of the team's performance, I thought Turnbull was quite poor, being honest. I think he slows down our play a lot of the time. Brendan seems to like him a lot. I think Holm came on and really impressed again. In terms of his technical abilities, he just sees the game really well. And I think I'd love to see him start against Dundee, being honest, over Turnbull. When it comes to that game, Maeda, I thought, was kind of, he had the beating at Tavernier a couple of times, but just kind of fell over the ball, or Tavernier shoved him away. He's just such a frustrating player to watch sometimes, Dyson Maeda, because he works so hard, and just sometimes his technical ability really just leaves a lot to be desired. But I just thought it was just really, really big win in terms of the Rodgers era.
I think so. I think it's maybe stuttered at the very beginning, but I think it's huge. I think we'll look back on that, as a pivotal result at the end of the season as well. Davey Boy McCauley, if you want to comment on the YouTube channel, get subscribing. It's all free of charge. Hail, hail, comrades! What a difference a win makes. I knew it all along. Of course you did. We all did, Davey. By the way, I've got to thank everybody for voting for us on the old Football Content Awards. Obviously, we've had a relationship with them from way back, Kev, haven't we? When was it now? The first one, Kev, was it 2018? 2018, and we went down to Ali Pally, and I was buzzing because the Stone Roses played at Alexandra Palace. I think this was before it became synonymous with the darts, and the Stone Roses had played there. So I was just going down there for a free meal, basically, but we won an award, brought it up the roads, and we've had a kind of relationship with them since then. So thanks everybody for nominating us, and hopefully we can get into the finalist list, and hopefully we can have an Acsom night out as well, because it's doing at Anfield. Kev, you might want to meet up with some of your Anfield rap guys. We'll come back to Phillips. There's quite a few comments coming in about Nat Phillips. Why did we sign somebody injured and all that kind of stuff? I don't think he's injured as such. I just don't think he's fit. Kev, have you got any update on that? I think it's more match sharpness that he was lacking.
That's probably the case. I mean, I heard somebody saying, "Oh, he was injured, but then he was training the day before." And as you say, it's probably match sharpness. And Rodgers, there's a reason Rodgers is a manager, and I'm sitting on my couch on a Monday afternoon talking about Brendan Rodgers being a manager. He knows more than me. But most folk know more than me. But like, he knows, he would have knew, and it's really came in on the Friday. So if Rodgers has worked with that team all week and says, right, this is a game plan, this is what we're going to do, he's not going to try and disrupt it by bringing in a player who arrives on the Friday and does that. So he must have had another week with Scales and Lager Bielka together, and we're going to work on a shape, we're going to work on a formation, we're going to work on keeping the ball absolutely better, because that's what we're going to need to do. That game there's a completely different game for the one the week before. So you can be rightly worried that we failed to break down St Johnstone, and you can be rightly over the moon about the way that we played yesterday, but they're two completely different sets of games. If we would have scored, if you go back to the Kilmarnock game as well, I think if we went 1-0 up against Kilmarnock, we won that game 2 or 3, because they then come out and we can get in behind with the pacing that we've got. And I think this is going to be a big thing with the Brendan Rodgers Celtic. I think if we score first, we will open teams up more, but the longer they get to sit there and no come out and their shell's going to be a problem. But when you saw that yesterday, he's obviously worked on that, and it's a simple game. Callum McGregor gave me the ball, I'll play it back. Matt O'Reilly gives the ball. You can give Matt O'Reilly the ball with 3 guys round about him, and he'll still get it back. It's guys being brave to take the ball under pressure. And I know what James was saying there about Turnbull. I didn't think he was quiet. I don't think he was actually brave enough to actually take the ball in these situations where O'Reilly and McGregor stood up and went, just give us that ball. We're going to take it. We're giving you an angle for the 2 centre backs to actually pass the ball. Same with Taylor at times. Taylor was brave, just giving them the angle. Just play it to me. Maybe sometimes he lost it in that, but he's there. And it was interesting that Rodgers says after it about Lager Bielka, he says, I'm unhappy that he didn't get an angle to play the ball quick enough.
I was just going to say that, Kev. I think it's a great point, right? And it leads us on to the refereeing decisions, actually. When there was an angle from behind the goals, I mentioned it yesterday, when you watch Lager Bielka, right? And I think he did have a good game. He's looked up for that angle, and I think Johnston might have tried to give him it, but he had a body right behind him. If I'm going to criticise anyone, it was probably Abada. I don't think Abada gave him any kind of option to pass the ball. So it was just that moment that he hesitated, and obviously he was thereafter fouled. Right. And at the time, I've said, right, correct decision. It's gone too far. Don Robertson didn't see it at the time. It's been overturned. I'm going to ask you first, James, and I'll go around the room, ask your thoughts about it. Firstly, was it the right decision? And secondly, what do you make of the kind of fallout? Does it just show that loads of pundits don't know what the rules are?
Yeah, well, firstly, it is a foul. He does directly impede him, so it definitely is a foul. I seen on Twitter yesterday that I think Rangers got like the exact same decision. James Sands kicked, I think it was up in Ross County maybe. James Sands kicked someone's leg and then fell over. The exact same situation as Lagerbielk, and Rangers got the free. So the whole fallout just kind of trying to take away from Rangers' performance. Really, like they were really poor. I followed their recruitment over the summer, and the likes of Dessers, Lammers, guys that scored 4 or 5 goals in Serie A, albeit goal records obviously aren't everything we see with Jota. How good he was for us when he came in, he wasn't that prolific elsewhere. But these guys are 20, 26, 27, 28. They're bringing them in on 4 or 5 year deals, and they're just, I just don't rate a lot of them, to be honest. But I think a lot of it's just trying to take away from Rangers' performance, how bad it was. Just kind of that all excuses thing, to be honest. But yeah, the whole fallout has just been crazy, because I think if you look at the whole game, Rangers obviously put us under pressure in the second half. You'd be worried if they didn't. They're 1-0 down at home in front of a full Rangers crowd. You'd be worried if they didn't put us under pressure. But if you look at their chances, like a lot of them were just kind of half chances. Probably the Danilo one, probably their best chance of the game. The one-time scales kind of switched off. Danilo got caught. Danilo went in behind them. Probably should have scored. But other than that, Rangers really did not have a lot of chances. And I think we, on another day with a more settled team, the likes of Tate in there, when these guys have had a run of games, like leaving Palma or Maida when he's in good form, I think we probably would have put another one past them. But yeah, definitely 100%. I think it was definitely a foul. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing with that is James McKenzie came in, and I think I was watching it probably 30 seconds behind live, and he got a goal update on his phone. I said, switch that off. You know, he told me we were a goal down, Jerry, you know, and I'm sitting here making my notes for the halftime bulletin, and then we watched it unfold. That was obviously the first goal. But you make a good point, I think, James, in relation to chances, because Kyogo scored the winning goal. Absolute game changer. He's a game winner. He's a match winner, Jerry. Kyogo had two good chances. Made at the back post was the one I was saying to Kev. It was like that Johnny Hayes moment. I just wanted to get the second goal. It still wouldn't have made Jim Orr comfortable, Kev. He needs to be 3-0 up before he can enjoy a game of football. But we did have the chances. I mean, the way that the narrative is kind of being run at the moment, or spun, is that it was all Rangers and you know, Celtic kind of nicked the win. I'm sorry, it wasn't like that at all. We soaked up pressure when we had to soak it up. And on another day, as James said, we could have scored another goal, and it would have made it look a wee bit more emphatic.
You're going to the hardest place in Scotland that we go to, and that's a foot of doubt. And you expect and you want your challengers to have a go at you. I mean, it's great going there and winning 5-1 and stuff like that. It's absolutely amazing. But at the end of the day, you want to be competitive. You want the league to be competitive. You want to come out as we had to work for that today, like we had at Pittodrie and yesterday. So you would expect Rangers to come back into that second half. If they didn't come back into that in the second half, then they're something far, far up. And even then, it's a bit like the Aberdeen game. They had one chance, and James's scale switched off. Actually, I think it was Bernabe that switched off for that Danilo chance. I think he was slow getting to the ball at the touchline, and he was lazy with his clearance, and he just didn't get up to speed quick enough. But you expect that. You've got to expect. That's the least you would expect going to your main rival stadium. What are they trying to do? I mean, they've signed all these strikers and they went back to Ruth. So they've signed a guy called Cyril. I haven't heard anybody called Cyril since the 1980s.
Is that his first or second name?
I think his second name's Dross or Dressers or whatever it is.
All right.
Nessers.
So, and as James rightly points out, he played for a team that got relegated in Serie A last season. He's 28. This is not a guy you're getting at 20, 21 that's hungry. This is a boy who's a journeyman, who's now at 28 there. From our point of view, Lagerbielke was slow, but he didn't get an option. So I'll let him off with that. It was a free kick. It was a free kick. Anywhere else in the ground, that's a free kick. That happens in the box, it's a penalty. We've had Bobby Madden come out and actually tell us, by the way, that is a free kick.
Always rated Bobby. Always rated Bobby.
Always rated. He's a good one.
He didn't think that was a penalty kick on Lee Griffiths 4 years ago, did he?
Who was that again? That was it Clint Hill? Was it Clint Hill that took him out? Yeah.
Took him out. I didn't think that was a penalty though. See, I can still cast up.
Remarkable.
But when you're actually looking at it, that caught us out because they ended up 2-on-2. Somebody has to go to the guy. Joe Hart's coming out going, "I'm kind of really." You're looking for them to make a mess of it. What was brilliant? What was absolutely brilliant was them celebrating the goal getting disallowed.
I know. That was tremendous.
Hilarious.
By the way, I've watched some of the replays back, and they've put the volume down just to save their blushes, but it's quite obvious that they're all bouncing about at the time. you know.
I found that as soon as it went to VAR and it started taking longer and longer, you know what's coming. I mean, you know, as soon as it gets calls across, they look at it, and you look at the three of them that have to call it. They must have been racking their brains. How can we let this go? How can we do this? Can you think? This is how we read the.
Here's another point.
We want to hear that conversation.
I know. Here is the point I'd make though, Kev. This is another thing I heard yesterday after the game, was in relation to the fact that, you know, talking about pressure, right? Once there's a VAR review, they were basically claiming it puts pressure on the ref. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's a bit of a contradiction. Surely there's more pressure on the ref to say it's not a goal, right? Because they're playing in front of an exclusive Rangers crowd at Ibrox. Not because he's been called over to look at VAR. The pressure's on the ref because, you know, but he's called it right second time round with the aid of VAR. It worked for us. But we had a wee laugh about this last week, Jerry, because we were speaking about Stubbsy, Big Alan Stubbs coming out and saying what he said. And by the way, the meltdown started from that moment. You know what I mean? They're all blaming Stubbs for this.
I've missed all the good stuff.
1 week is a long time in the world of Celtic, Jerry. That's for sure. That is for sure. But, you know, basically it was refereed properly. And I say that, there was moments in that game that still frustrate me. Like, at one point, Kyogo was shoved by Butland, the goalie, right? He was shoved off the ball for no reason. I don't know if he hit the deck, but you're thinking, right, just let that go. And it's the same thing happened to McGregor. All over the pitch, all these wee niggly things. And then he's applauded after the game for only giving 2 yellows. Well, that's maybe because you've not done your job properly that you've only given 2 yellows. There should be more than 2 yellows. That, for me, it's not about managing a game by saying, I've only given 2 yellows. If there's 6 yellow card offences, Jerry, you give 6 yellow cards. It's not about just trying to cut down and manage the game that way. I want to talk about Kyogo, though, because when you talk about quality and obviously what Rangers have done to strengthen, with no real strategy, I don't think. We've had a strategy, and it's been criticised a wee bit, you know, bringing in young players on long contracts, some of them unknown. And that is a strategy because we want to develop them, and obviously they can develop at Celtic, very much like Matt O'Reilly, who cost £1.5 million, which is sensational when you watch the performances he's putting in. We have a strategy. If you're going to go out and spend £6 million on a striker with no real backup to that, and you're still playing Kemar Roofe after all this time, who is the best striker at Ibrox. I mean, we said that before the game. It shows that you don't have a strategy. When it comes down to it, though, Jerry, if you've got that quality in the final third, you'll win games, and that's what Kyogo gave us yesterday. Unbelievable finish, first-time finish. You can't forget the assist from O'Reilly. How important is Kyogo to this football team? Unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely massive. A special place in my heart, because I think we're witnessing. I think he's going to be a legend. That goal that he scored, and it's been said on the group chat as well, is world class. It's world class. The finish is just unreal. And that's going to be one of the goals that we look back on again and again. Almost like the Nakamura against Alan McGregor, that volley, that curve. And not just because how brilliant the goal was. People will remember that as the game where we went in with a depleted squad, especially the centre-back pairing. There wasn't a lot of faith going into that game. And we came out of it unscathed and with pass marks for pretty much every player. But that one goal was one that we will look back on. And how many of them is he given? I seen a stat today. Was it an Acsom stat? I don't know. That he scored a goal. So against Rangers at Celtic Park in both goals. He scored Ibrox in both goals and at Hampden in both goals. When's the last time a Celtic striker's done that?
I think it was Hamish Carton. Not that he was the last Celtic striker. I think he mentioned it.
I was going to say what? So, but I just think we're watching the fact that he's signed a new contract, and he's been said in the past that he's mentioned Nakamura and the legacy that he's left, that how he's a legend, having his face up on the stadium and all that. And I think that he's in it for that. The passion that he's got. I mean, it was such a shame that even he thought he was going to get flagged for offside. Right, so he couldn't really celebrate it. But you imagine that pop if it was half and half stadium. Can you imagine the noise?
Oh, I know.
Made? See when he scored it, right? See, because he takes it so quickly, right? None of us expected him to hit it. I couldn't gear myself up for a cheer. It took me by surprise, so I kind of just squealed. Do you know what I mean? It just hit me by surprise. But I love the boy. Absolutely love him. So, Kyogo. the L word. We don't want to mention the L word, the Larson, but the comparisons, it's hard not to make them now, isn't it?
Well, we spoke about it last season with regards to players that had scored 32 or more goals for Celtic in a season. I think was there 4 or 5 in the last 20 years. It was like Lee Griffiths, Henrik Larsson, Dembele scored more than 32, Gary Hooper, and of course, and your man Kyogo. So he's up there. What was the best assist of the 2 goals that Jerry's just spoke about, though, Kevin? Was it Gary Caldwell into Nakamura, or was it Matt O'Reilly into Kyogo? Because I tell you what, O'Reilly's assist was brilliant, superb, winning that header the way he did. Because he was on the back foot, wasn't he?
I'm going to need to back the Stirling man, Gary Caldwell here. I need to back up my home tune here. So Caldwell's assist was better. Sorry, Matt. He done well to get the header back, and Kyogo's sharp as a tack. He just knew right away. I was a bit like Jerry. When the ball was dropped him, I'm going, I think he's offside, because just the way the camera angle was. And I was just about to shout, and if anybody disagrees with me here, you're lying. I was just about to shout, take a touch, when he actually volleys it into the back of the net. And I'm going, well, what do I know? No, I didn't know anything. That's the thing. And there was just his nonchalant celebration, as if to go, right, here's that flag, here's the linesman flag. Then they realised it wasn't coming. Then you realise Soapy Suter was about away for a pie or something like that and played him on. Like, what a finish. What an absolute finish. And you didn't want to mention the L word, but I think he is probably the biggest game striker that we've had since the L word. Now we're getting to that point where we can. I mean, he only had 9 touches of the ball yesterday, and he could have had a hat trick.
He had 9 touches. Is that right? That's sensational.
Wow,
Kev,
man.
I think the L word. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shelf it until the Champions League games. I think that's what I'm going to do, because
the best big games domestically, without question, he turns up for them. But a bit like you could always rely on the L word to actually be there. And
you're allowed to say it. You're allowed to say it.
I wrote a book about him. It's still available.
You have written a book about him. Aye. Again, though, it does lead us into that discussion with regards to Kyogo and how he's been deployed by Brendan Rodgers since Rodgers came in. There's been a couple of changes that he's made, James, that I think Rodgers, going back to what we said before, adaptable. He's able to make these changes. And, he for me, in the first few games, we weren't really playing with inverted fullbacks, for example. And I think we've seen a bit of a return to that against St Johnstone. And then during the game yesterday, I did see Taylor coming inside. I seen Johnson coming inside and bulking up the midfield, and I expected it. And similarly with Kyogo, always playing on the shoulder of the last man, he was coming a lot deeper in previous games this season, but he just switched them again against Rangers to great effect. And I think it shows not only the finishing ability of Kyogo, but it just shows you that Rodgers is willing to adapt if necessary.
Listen, the thing about Rodgers is it's just all about adaptability. Like, Brendan Rodgers isn't coming into this team saying invert fullback's gone, quick throwing's gone. He's not going to destroy all of Andrew's work. Like, I think it's all about just balance, really. I think Kyogo is obviously most dangerous on the last line of the defender. That's where he is most dangerous, his pace, his quality in the final third. But I think he definitely, especially for European games, we're going to have to, at home especially, we're going to have to kind of at least try and keep the ball and break through the press. And I think to do that, we'll need Kyogo probably to come a bit shorter and just assist in the build-up play, which is, I don't think it's something that he's not excellent at it. I think he's obviously getting better doing it under Rodgers. But in terms of the Larsson conversation, I think, listen, I love Kyogo, and I think he probably is in the conversation, but I really want to see him perform to the best he can in the Champions League. I think last year didn't really get the best of running it with Mikael Giakoumakis, who was, they were both kind of vying for that position, and Ange gave big Giakoumakis the nod in a couple of occasions, but I think he'll really always only coming back to fitness, so he's probably going to have the run of the 6 games, unless injuries or whatever, to really leave a stamp on the Champions League this season. But I'm kind of like Callum McGregor at the moment. I'm running out of words to describe the lad, but yeah, he really is he's pure quality. Like, the finish is just unbelievable to hit that on the half volley. Like, and I just, even watching the game yesterday, you look at Rangers in the final third, I don't see anyone that Rangers have that could do that. Even
No.
they brought on Danilo, what, £6 million. Like, there's a reason Feyenoord wants to get rid of him. They weren't keeping him for the Champions League this year. I just think we just have that bit of class in the final third. The likes of Kyogo, Abada, Maeda, they really seem to turn up in these games, which is what you need when you're coming into these big games. Massively.
And you know what? I think he's got it in him to show that he can do it at the Champions League level as well and on that platform. And Joe S comes in the invincible one we trust. Yes, this guy knows how to win. He said he was going to tell this team and he was going to show this team how to win. And he absolutely did that. Jim Hannaway, spot on, Kev. We were always in control. Great to see you back, says Jim. We've also got Will McMillan holding on to the ball, shut their crowd up. That could become a bit of an issue, Jerry, right? Counterproductive, some might say, right? So obviously there was a lot of talk about the fact that it's now becoming normalised that it's exclusive to the home crowd, certainly at Ibrox, because I think Rangers will take their allocation that we are forced to offer them, and there might be Rangers fans at Celtic Park. But in terms of a spectacle and all this and all that, we can have that conversation. But on a day like yesterday, Jerry, I thought it was counterproductive for them. They might have thought we're going to have the home advantage, the full stadium rocking. I mean, I was at the game, the February game, the 3-0 game, the coming of age of Rio Atati. That's one of the best atmospheres I've ever seen against Rangers, and that was exclusively Celtic fans, right? So I absolutely loved it. But yesterday, it was counterproductive for them in many, many ways, Jerry, wasn't it? Because the crowd started getting on their backs.
They didn't take it very well. And I think they were getting on their back quite early on as well. And I thought, this might work in our favour here. Because if you look at it, in the first half, the possession that we had, the stats of possession, the shots on goal, if you look at them, it didn't look like we were fazed by the crowd. Certainly didn't. I mean, maybe a wee bit of shakiness at the start with their offside goal, but they would never have got that goal if it wasn't that far offside anyway, so the defence was doing their job. But it was, I mean, I'm not going to laugh at it because it's still a long way to go, but it was toxic. A lot of the fans that you see online are talking about they've not seen it that toxic in many, many years. So they're not happy with what they're seeing. I was. I had a lovely day. It was fantastic. I had my TV up full blast. And this morning's been a good morning. But we don't like to focus on. We're focusing on them now because that's who we just played. But we've got some other tough games coming up. I dread going away to Kelly and places like that with these pitches. So I think we've got some tough ones coming up, as I say. But I enjoyed it. But it's put to bed now and onto the Champions League, like you say. I want to see some progress there. If I've ever, because I've not had a chance to say this about the draw because I was away as well. If there's ever a chance to get through, I think it's now. But if there's ever a chance to get too complacent about getting through a group, it's now as well. So I'm quietly confident, especially watching us grind that out yesterday. That boosted my confidence. We've got about 300 centre backs still to come in out off injury that we can choose from. We've got the likes of Palmer, who I don't want to say it because I jinx everything, but I'm really excited about him. Tillio, that we keep forgetting about, who can also play up front, apparently, that Jared's, I'm sure he said he can play as a striker. Coming back in, I thought was great, even though he made a bit of a meal at the end, but you can put that down to rustiness. We've got so many good players to come in. Joe Hart finding his form. Maeda, I agree with you, mate. It's frustrating to watch at times. I actually wrote during the game, before I forgave him, I wrote Maeda couldn't cross a road at times because his final ball has been shocking. If you look at the one that he tried to play over the top and just put it out the park previous games, but the work that he's been doing defensively, it's like he gives with one hand, doesn't he? Takes with the other at times, but he had a great game. I thought just a few technical issues.
I'm going to put this out there, Jerry.
Yeah.
I think once our three wingers are off fit, Maeda is your second choice striker.
I don't think
you'll actually see him too often out in the wing.
Yeah.
Once we get the wingers up to speed.
Aye, because look at the choice we've got with the wingers coming through now. I don't think James Forrest, I don't think James is going to get a look in again once they're all fit. But who knows? There's the jinx again. They'll probably all get injured. But I'm excited. As always, Jim Orr will be watching this going, here he goes again. Mr. Excitement. I think I'm allowed to be after yesterday. So
yeah. Yeah, the other one I'd mention I'd throw into the mix is Yang. I think Yang's looked good in the cameo appearances that he's made. So we've got some exciting wingers to come back in. Joseph McGonigal. Today's humble pie is baked by Liam Scales, and it's lovely. Yum, yum. Absolutely, and I'll have a big, massive slice of it as well. And Sushil Bali. Rodgers should give Iwata a chance. I'd have played him in the starting 11, but as Kevin says, that's why I'm sitting on this chair talking about it, because he wasn't even in the squad and they won the game. We've also got Edward Moore. Rangers finally got a decision against them. Boyd. Yes, Boyd was happy with that last night, and thanks for supporting the channel as well, Edward. Fantastic. It's always a pleasure to get onto the bulletin, particularly after a win against Rangers. We are now 4 points clear of them at the top of the league. They've lost a couple of games already out of 4, and that's their problem. We'll concentrate in our own backyard. I've got to thank every single one of you for getting involved in the chat. It's been really, really busy on the comment section. We really do appreciate all your support. And I got a message this morning. I was up at Celtic Park doing the Wander Around Paradise. That'll be back on the channel, and it'll be back on the channel at 6 o'clock tonight, all going well. We need to change the music a wee bit, so I'm just looking for another electronic tune to choose, Kev, making sure it passes the Kev Graham test. But I got a wee message, and I'm not going to say who it is, right? You know who it is because I messaged you back. I'm just going to quote one wee bit, right? There's something about being and feeling part of Celtic that makes you feel like you can overcome adversity and just makes you feel like you can take on the world. That was a wee positive message I got this morning from an Acsom listener, and it made a huge difference both to myself and the person it was intended to be read by as well. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to Kevin Graham, and what a debut, James French, and also Jerry Taylor. Thank you all for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.